I truly believed tomorrow would be the first time in years my family looked at me like I belonged. But when I said the words aloud, my aunt froze. She looked at me as if I were a ghost and whispered that the wedding had already happened. That was when I understood. They did not just want me absent, they wanted me erased from the paper, the memories, and every story they told. My name is Quinn Castillo. I am 34 years old, and for the last decade, I have been the Director of Risk Control at Harborline Risk Group. My entire career is built on the ability to predict disaster before it happens. I look at spreadsheets, structural reports, and financial forecasts, and I tell powerful people where the cracks in their foundations lie. I am paid to see what others ignore. I am paid to never be blindsided. And yet, as I stood on the porch of my Aunt Lorraine's house in Savannah, Georgia, holding a garment bag that contained a silk dress worth $600, I was completely blind to the catastrophe waiting for me on the other side of the door. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and the humid weight of a storm rolling in off the coast. I adjusted the garment bag over my shoulder and knocked. I felt a rare flutter in my chest. Hope. It was a dangerous thing for a woman like me to feel regarding her family. But this time, I thought it was safe. This time, I had an invitation. The door opened. Aunt Lorraine stood there, wiping her hands on a floral dish towel. She looked tired, her graying hair pulled back in a loose bun, but her eyes widened when she saw me. "Quinn?" she said. It wasn't a greeting. It was a question, laced with a strange, vibrating panic. "Hi, Aunt Lorraine?" I said, stepping inside before she could block the way. The air conditioning hit my face, cool and dry. "I know I'm a little early, but I drove down from the city to beat the traffic. I wanted to show you the dress I bought for tomorrow. It's navy blue. Mom always said black was bad luck at weddings, so I compromised." I walked past her into the living room, talking fast, driven by that nervous energy that always seized me when I tried to play the role of the dutiful daughter. "And I got Trevor and Mara that espresso machine they wanted, the one that cost nearly $1,000. I figured if I'm going to be the rich sister, I might as well lean into the stereotype, right?" I laughed. It was a hollow sound that bounced off the walls. Lorraine didn't laugh. She didn't even close the front door. She just stood in the hallway, gripping the dish towel as if she were trying to strangle it. "Quinn?" she whispered. Her voice was trembling. I turned around, unzipping the garment bag slightly to reveal the fabric. "What do you think? Is it too much?" I didn't want to outshine the bridesmaids, obviously, but my words died in my throat. My gaze had drifted to the coffee table. Sitting right in the center, next to a bowl of potpourri, was a large, leather-bound book. It was pristine, heavy, and unmistakably new. Gold lettering was stamped into the cover. "Trevor and Mara." I frowned. That didn't make sense. The wedding was tomorrow. You don't print the album before the wedding. That was physically impossible. I took a step toward the table. "Quinn, don't," Lorraine said. Her voice rose an octave, sharp and desperate. I didn't listen. I reached out and flipped the cover open. The first page was a full-sized, high-resolution photograph of my brother, Trevor, standing under a massive oak tree draped in Spanish moss. He was wearing a tuxedo. Beside him, Mara looked radiant in white lace, holding a bouquet of hydrangeas. The lighting was perfect. The smiles were genuine. I turned the page. There was my mother, Diane, wiping a tear from her cheek as Trevor said his vows. There was my father, Frank, toasting with a glass of champagne. There was the cake, cut and eaten. There was the dance floor, crowded with people I knew, cousins, neighbors, family friends. My brain stalled. I was looking at a memory of an event that hadn't happened yet. It was like a glitch in reality. "I don't understand," I said, my voice sounding very far away. "I can't wait for tomorrow. But how did they take these?" Lorraine moved then. She rushed to my side and put a hand on my arm, her grip tight, shaking. "Quinn, stop," she begged. "Please." I looked up at her. Her face was pale, drained of blood. She looked terrified. Not for me, but of me. Or perhaps of what was breaking inside the room. I stammered. Aunt Lorraine, why are there photos? The wedding is April 19th. That's tomorrow. Lorraine closed her eyes. She took a breath that rattled in her chest. When she opened her eyes again, they were wet. Oh, honey, she stammered. You don't know? The wedding, it was last week. The world stopped. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, the distant sound of a car passing outside. It all vanished into a high-pitched ringing in my ears. Last week? I repeated. April 12th, she whispered. I shook my head. No, that's wrong. My hands were shaking as I reached into my purse. I dug past my wallet, past the keys to my luxury sedan, past the company phone that never stopped buzzing, and pulled out the thick, cream-colored envelope. I tore it open and pulled out the card with the embossed silver calligraphy. I held it up to her face. Look, read it. April 19th, Saturday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Lorraine looked at the card, and tears spilled over her lashes. She didn't argue. She simply walked over to the mantelpiece, picked up an invitation that had been tucked behind a vase, and handed it to me. It was identical to mine. Same font, same paper weight, same silver embossing, except for one line. Saturday, April 12th, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I looked from my card to hers. The numbers danced before my eyes. 19th, 12th, 7 days. They hadn't just forgotten to invite me. They hadn't just excluded me. They had gone to a printer. They had paid extra. They had commissioned a single. Specific forgery designed to keep me waiting, to keep me silent, to keep me oblivious until the deed was done. My hand went slack. The crystal photo frame I had been holding, a picture of me and Trevor from when we were kids, which I had picked up without thinking, slipped from my fingers. It hit the hardwood floor. Crash. The sound was violent. It sounded like a bone snapping. Shards of glass skittered across the polished wood, scattering like shrapnel. I stared at the broken glass. I didn't move to pick it up. I couldn't breathe. It felt like a wire inside my chest. One that had been pulled taut for 34 years had finally snapped. It wasn't a mistake, I said. My voice was deadly calm. They sent me the wrong date on purpose. Lorraine sank onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. I told them not to. I fought with your mother about it for 2 hours on the phone. I told her it was cruel. And what did she say? I asked. Lorraine looked up. Her eyes were red. She said you would ruin the atmosphere. Ruin the atmosphere? She said if you came, you would start asking questions. She said you make everything about numbers. She said you'd ask about the venue costs, or the catering bill, or the house. Lorraine's voice dropped to a whisper. She said, Quinn doesn't know how to be family. She only knows how to be an auditor. I felt the blood drain from my face. I thought about the last 10 years, the checks I wrote, the tuition I covered, the loans that never came back. The times I sat silently at dinner, nodding while they spent money I knew they didn't have, biting my tongue so I wouldn't be the bad guy. I had bought this dress. I had bought a $1,000 espresso machine. I had taken 2 days off work, rescheduling a meeting with a client worth $5 million, just to be here. I had driven 4 hours thinking, finally, I am just a sister. Finally, I am just a daughter. But I wasn't. I was never the guest. I was the bank. And you don't invite the bank to the party. You just send the bank a statement. I looked down at the wedding album on the table. It was open to a group shot. Everyone was there. My cousins from Atlanta, the neighbors from down the street, even the dog. There was no gap where I should have been. No empty chair. No space left for the missing sister. The composition was perfect. They had arranged the family portrait so that the ranks were closed tight. They hadn't just uninvited me. They had curated a reality where I did not exist. A coldness spread through my veins, displacing the shock. It was a familiar feeling. It was the feeling I got right before I denied a high-risk claim. It was the absolute clarity of seeing the data for what it was, not what I wanted it to be. Quinn? Lorraine asked, her voice trembling. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the shattered glass on the floor. I looked at the fake invitation in my hand. A piece of paper that proved my own mother and father had spent time and money to execute a fraud against their own child. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I slowly placed my fake invitation on the table, right next to the real one. "I'm going to go see them," I said. "They're at the house on the island," Lorraine warned. "Quinn, please, don't go down there while you're angry. Just go back to the city. Let it go." I looked at my aunt. I loved her, but I saw her now for what she was, an accomplice. A witness who had stayed silent while the crime was committed. "I'm not angry, Aunt Lorraine," I said, picking up my purse. I wasn't lying. Anger is hot. Anger is messy. What I felt was something much worse. I felt efficient. I walked to the door, stepping over the broken glass of the photo frame. I didn't look back at the album. I didn't need to see the pictures. I had the only picture I needed now. They wanted a life without Quinn Castillo? Fine. I would show them exactly what that cost. I drove away from Aunt Lorraine's house with the silence of a funeral procession, even though I was the only one in the car. The road to the highway was lined with ancient oaks and Spanish moss that looked like torn gray rags hanging in the humid air. I did not turn on the radio. I did not call anyone. I just drove, my hands gripping the steering wheel at 10 and 2, exactly as I had been taught, exactly as I did everything in my life. For as long as I could remember, my family had operated on a simple, unspoken feudal system. Trevor was the golden child, the sun around which our domestic galaxy spun. He was charismatic, handsome, and perpetually forgiven. I, on the other hand, was the useful child. I was the designated adult in a house full of eternal adolescents. I was the one who remembered deadlines. I was the one who double-checked the locks. And eventually, I became the one who wrote the checks. They called me cold. They called me calculating. My mother liked to tell her friends that Quinn was difficult to get close to, because I did not melt at the sight of a weeping apology. I demanded plans. I demanded receipts. I demanded to know how, exactly, we were going to fix the mess this time, to a family that survived on charm and vague promises. My need for logic felt like an attack. I merged onto the interstate, the speedometer hitting 65 miles per hour. My mind drifted back 3 years, to the incident that had cemented my role as the family bank. It was the summer the vacation home in Bluffton, South Carolina, almost went under. The house was a sprawling, white-columned beauty right on the river, the kind of place that signaled old money and effortless grace. The problem was, my parents did not have old money. They had debt. They had ignored the property taxes for 4 consecutive years, and they had taken out a secondary loan against the equity to fund one of Trevor's failed business ventures, a craft brewery that never brewed a single pint. I remembered the phone call. My father, Frank, was not asking for help. He was presenting a tragedy. He told me the bank was foreclosing. He told me they would lose the only place where we had ever been happy as a family. He cried. So, I stepped in. But I did not just hand them the cash. I worked in risk management. I knew that pouring water into a bucket with a hole in the bottom does not fix the bucket. It just wastes the water. I created a limited liability company called Castillo Beacon, LLC. It sounded corporate, anonymous, and boring, exactly the way I liked it. I used this entity to pay off the tax liens and purchase the distressed mortgage note from the bank. I drafted the paperwork myself, structuring it so that technically, the LLC now held the deed when I brought the papers to my parents. They did not read them. They were too busy celebrating the miracle. They hugged me. They said, "Thank you for helping your mother and father. Quinn, we knew we could count on you." They saw a gift. I saw a transaction. I kept every single document. I had scans of the checks, the transfer confirmations, the email threads where the bank acknowledged Castillo Beacon LLC as the new lien holder. I filed them away not out of malice, but out of instinct. In my line of work, trust is a luxury item I cannot afford. I assumed that one day they would pay me back, or at least acknowledge that the roof over their heads was held up by my spine. I was wrong. 2 months ago. At the engagement dinner for Trevor and Mara, I got my answer. It was at a seafood restaurant downtown. The air was loud with laughter and the clinking of expensive wine glasses. Wine that I had paid for. Naturally, Trevor stood up to give a toast. He looked like a prince, flushed with happiness and alcohol. He went around the table, hugging everyone. He hugged our parents. He hugged Mara's parents. He even hugged the waiter in a burst of performative joy. When he got to me, he stopped. He placed a hand on my shoulder, gave it a firm, dismissive squeeze, and moved on. It was the kind of touch you give a piece of furniture you are navigating around. "And to my sister," he had said, almost as an afterthought, "who is probably calculating the tip right now." The table roared with laughter. I forced a smile. I was indeed calculating the tip, because I knew that when the bill came, everyone else would suddenly be very interested in the ceiling. That night, I went home and cried for 10 minutes in the shower. Then I got out, dried off, and opened my laptop to look for wedding gifts. I bought them the espresso machine. I booked a hotel suite near the venue. I requested 3 days of vacation time, assuring my boss that I would be available by email for emergencies. I even practiced my congratulations speech in the mirror so that I would sound warm, so that no one could accuse me of being jealous or stiff. I did everything right. I twisted myself into knots trying to be the sister they wanted, hoping that if I just paid enough, smiled enough, and stayed quiet enough, I would finally earn my seat at the table. And all the while, Aunt Lorraine had been the only one to look at me with pity. "Just let it go, Quinn," she would say whenever I pointed out that Trevor had borrowed $5,000 and never mentioned it again. "You know how he is. For the sake of peace, just let it go." Driving down the highway now, with the fake invitation burning a hole in my passenger seat, I finally understood what Aunt Lorraine meant by peace for my family, meant my silence. Peace meant I supplied the resources while they supplied the drama. Peace meant I was allowed to be in the room as long as I didn't ask why I was the only one paying for the lights. I felt a cold clarity settle over me. Sharper than any anger, they had not just excluded me from a wedding, they had made a strategic calculation. They believed that Quinn Castillo was a creature of habit who would never fight back because she was too desperate to belong. They thought I was a checkbook with a heartbeat. I pulled my car into the parking lot of a rest stop near the state border. I needed to stop moving. I needed to work. I opened my laptop bag and pulled out my computer. The screen glowed to life, illuminating the dark interior of the car. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I did not open my email. I did not open my calendar. I opened a secure folder on my hard drive. The one encrypted with a password that was 20 characters long. Inside were subfolders labeled with years. 10 years of bank statements. 10 years of loans. The tax records for the Bluffton house. The incorporation papers for Castillo Beacon, LLC. I created a new file. I did not name it family or revenge or anything emotional. I named it with a single word that defined my entire existence in their eyes, and the weapon I would now use to dismantle theirs. Proof. I hit enter. The cursor blinked on the blank white page. Waiting. I was done being the sister. I was done being the daughter. It was time to go to work. The drive to Hilton Head Island took me a little over an hour from Savannah. I drove the speed limit the entire way. I did not speed. I did not weave through traffic. I drove with the precision of a woman transporting nitroglycerin. My parents lived in a gated community called Sea Pines. It was a place of manicured golf courses, bicycle paths shaded by live oaks, and homes that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. My parents did not earn that kind of money. They lived it. There is a difference. I pulled into the driveway of the house they had been renting for the last 5 years. It was a sprawling beige stucco structure with a terracotta roof. My father's leased sedan was in the driveway. Trevor's convertible, a car he had bought 6 months ago with money he claimed was an angel investment, was parked right behind it. I turned off the engine. The silence inside my car was heavy, like the air before a tornado touches down. I walked up the front path. I didn't ring the doorbell. I had a key. I had paid for the security system installation 3 years ago after my mother became paranoid about burglaries, so naturally, I had a key. As I reached for the handle, I heard them. The living room window was open to let in the sea breeze. Laughter drifted out. It was warm, raucous laughter, the sound of champagne corks popping. God, look at this one. Trevor's voice floated through the screen. I look like a movie star. And Mara, babe, the light hits your veil perfectly. I love it, my mother, Diane, cooed. It's like something out of Vogue. I am so glad we went with the photographer I suggested. It was the right call, my father, Frank, rumbled. Expensive, but worth it. Then came a pause, followed by Trevor's voice again, lower this time, but clear enough to cut through the glass. Honestly, it's a good thing Quinn wasn't there. Can you imagine her hovering over the open bar, calculating the cost per drink? It would have killed the vibe. My hand froze on the doorknob. Oh, stop, my mother said. But she was laughing. Although you're right, it saved us from explaining the messy stuff. If she had been there, she would have started asking questions about the caterer or the venue deposit. She has that look, you know? That dissecting look. Exactly, Trevor said. No drama, just us. I lowered my hand from the latch. I didn't feel pain. I felt a sudden, icy confirmation. They weren't just avoiding me. They were relieved by my absence. I was not a person to them. I was an audit they had successfully evaded. I put the key in the lock and turned it. The door swung open. The laughter died instantly. They were gathered in the living room, clustered around the large coffee table, just as they had been in the photo album at Aunt Lorraine's. But here, the scene was live. Trevor was holding a glass of amber liquid. Mara was leaning on his shoulder. My parents were on the love seat. My mother was the first to see me. She didn't smile. She didn't stand up to hug me. She looked at me with a mixture of confusion and annoyance, the way one looks at a delivery driver who has walked into the wrong house. "Quinn?" she asked. "Why did you come?" Not hello. Not, "We missed you. Just why are you here?" I walked into the center of the room. I didn't put down my purse. I stood there, a dark blot on their pastel celebration. "I came for the wedding," I said. My voice was level. The invitation said April 19th, tomorrow. I pulled the thick cream envelope from my bag and tossed it onto the coffee table. It landed on top of a spread of glossy photos. "But Aunt Lorraine tells me I missed the show," I continued. "April 12th. That was the real date, wasn't it?" The room went dead silent. My father looked down at his shoes. Mara looked terrified, her eyes darting between Trevor and me. Trevor, to his credit, didn't flinch. He took a sip of his drink and shrugged. "I needed a perfect day, Quinn," he said. He spoke casually, as if explaining why he had chosen fish over chicken for dinner. "You know how you get? You're intense. You make everything heavy." "Heavy?" I repeated. "Yeah, heavy," Trevor said. "You walk into a room and the temperature drops 10 degrees. You're always judging. Can we afford this? Is this necessary? I didn't want that energy at my wedding. I wanted people who were happy for me, not people who were auditing me." I looked at my mother. "And you agreed with this? You sent me a fake invitation?" Diane sighed, smoothing the fabric of her dress. "It wasn't fake, Quinn. It was a diversion. We were going to have a separate dinner with you later, a family thing. It would have been nicer for you. Really, you hate crowds." "I hate crowds because I usually end up paying for them," I said. "See?" Trevor pointed his glass at me. "That, right there. That is exactly why you weren't invited. You think money buys you the right to control us. I think money buys you the roof over your head," I said, turning to look at the ceiling beams of the house. "Speaking of which, how is the vacation home in Bluffton? The one you all love so much. The one you told everyone has been in the family for generations." My father cleared his throat. It was a weak, wet sound. "Now, Quinn," Frank said. "Don't start." "Don't start?" I turned my gaze on him. 3 years ago, you called me weeping because the bank was going to take that house. You owed $40,000 in back taxes. You had a lien on the property. Who fixed that? Dad? He didn't answer. I asked you a question, I said. Who fixed it? You did, he mumbled. And who pays the property taxes every year? I asked. Who paid for the roof repair last autumn when the hurricane hit? Who wired $15,000 to Trevor last year when his angel investors pulled out? Quinn, my mother interrupted, her voice sharp. You are successful. You have a good job. Helping your family is normal. It is what decent children do. You don't see Trevor throwing it in our faces that he brings joy to this family. I stared at her. He brings joy. I bring checks. Is that the division of labor? You're twisting it, Diane said, shaking her head. You always twist things to make yourself the victim. We are proud of you, Quinn, but you are transactional. You think love is a ledger. Trevor laughed. It was a short, barking sound. He stood up, walking over to where I stood. He was tall, handsome, and completely hollow. Face it, Quinn, he said, looking down at me. You're great at your job. You're a machine, but that's all you are. You're good with papers and numbers and risk assessments. But do you ever create anything real? Do you have any passion? Or are you just the person who cleans up after the people who actually live life? The words hit me in the chest. Do you ever create anything real? For a second, I couldn't breathe. I looked at Trevor. I looked at the suit he was wearing, paid for by a loan I had co-signed. I looked at the engagement ring on Mara's finger. Paid for, I suspected, with money he had borrowed from the joint account I shared with our parents for emergencies. I looked at my mother, who was looking at me with distinct distaste. I realized then that they didn't hate me. Hate requires passion. They simply used me. I was a utility. I was electricity. I was running water. You don't thank the electricity for turning on the lights. You only curse it when it goes out. I was not a daughter. I was not a sister. I was a backup account. I was an overdraft protection plan named Quinn. Something inside me clicked into place. It was the final tumbler of a lock engaging. The hurt vanished, replaced by the cool hum of professional detachment. You're right, Trevor, I said softly. He blinked, surprised by my agreement. I am? Yes, I said. I am very good with papers. I am very good with numbers. That is my reality. I reached into my bag again. This time, I didn't pull out an invitation. I pulled out a plain manila file folder. It was thin, containing only a few sheets of paper, but it was heavier than anything else in the room. I placed it gently on the coffee table, right on top of the wedding album, covering the photo of their smiling, fraudulent faces. Since I'm only good with papers, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. Let's talk with real papers. My mother frowned. What is that? That, I said, is the beginning of the audit you were so afraid of. I smoothed the cover of the folder. Trevor said I don't create anything real, I said, looking him dead in the eye. I'm about to create a very real problem for all of you. I reached into the folder and fanned the documents out across the coffee table, like a dealer laying down a winning hand of poker. The paper made a sharp, swishing sound that cut through the silence of the room. Let us look at the history of this family, I said. My voice was steady, devoid of the trembling that used to plague me when I confronted them. Item 1, October 14th, 2 years ago, $12,400 paid to Miller Roofing for the storm damage repair on the Bluffton house. You told everyone insurance covered it. Insurance denied the claim because of pre-existing negligence. I paid it. I pointed to the next sheet. Item 2, the Foundation Stabilization Project, $8,900. You told the neighbors you dipped into your retirement savings. You have no retirement savings. I paid it. Trevor made a noise in the back of his throat, a dismissive scoff, but I did not look at him. I kept my eyes on the papers. Item 3, I continued, sliding a bank transfer confirmation toward the center of the table. February 3rd, last year, a wire transfer of $45,000 to an account named Trevor Castillo Business Operations. This was for the bar you wanted to open in downtown Savannah, the Velvet Lounge. Remember that? You said you had a solid business plan. You said you just needed seed capital, and you would pay me back with interest within 6 months. I looked up at Trevor then. He was staring at the paper, his face flushing a deep, angry red. The bar never opened, I said. You spent the money on a lease you broke, a designer you fired, and a trip to Cabo with your friends to scout locations. I never saw a dime back. I wrote it off on my taxes as a bad debt, a loss, just like every other investment I have made in you. So what? Trevor snapped. You have the money. You're the rich sister. That is what family does. We help each other. Help implies a two-way street, I said. This is not help. This is extraction. I picked up the final document. It was a copy of a property deed, stamped with the official seal of Beaufort County. And this, I said, is the most interesting piece of fiction you tell yourselves. My mother squinted at the paper. That is the house deed. So what? Read the line under owner of record, I said. Diane leaned in. Her eyes scanned the document. I saw the moment the words registered. Her brow furrowed. She looked up at me, confused. Castillo Beacon, LLC, she read aloud. What is that? That is a limited liability company, I explained. It is a legal entity used to hold assets. And do you know who is the sole managing member of Castillo Beacon, LLC? I didn't wait for an answer. I am, I said. My mother's face went white. She looked from the paper to me, and then to my father. Frank? What is she talking about? It is our house. We bought it 20 years ago. You bought it, I corrected her. And then you almost lost it, 3 years ago. When the bank was days away from auctioning it off on the courthouse steps, I stepped in. I paid off the arrears. I paid off the penalties. And in exchange, the bank transferred the title to my company. You signed the papers. Mom, you and Dad both sat at the kitchen table and signed the quitclaim deed. We signed a lot of papers that day, Diane shouted. Her voice was shrill, cracking with panic. You said it was just paperwork. You said it was a technicality to get the bank off our backs. We thought we were just signing temporarily. Temporarily? I asked. I let the word hang in the air. There is no such thing as signing temporarily in contract law. Mother, there is only signing. When you put your name on a deed transfer, it is not a suggestion. It is a transfer of ownership. You do not own that house. You haven't owned it for 3 years. You are guests living there by the grace of my patience. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a vacuum, sucking the oxygen out of the room. Then, Trevor moved. He lunged across the table, his hand snatching at the deed. Give me that! He grabbed the paper and crumpled it in his fist, ripping it in half with a violent, tearing sound. He threw the pieces on the floor and glared at me, his chest heaving. There, he yelled. It is gone. Are you happy now? You think you can just come in here and steal our house with a piece of paper? I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just looked at the torn paper on the rug, and then I looked back at him with mild pity. Trevor, I said softly, I work in risk management. Do you honestly think I would bring the original documents to a room full of desperate people? I tapped the empty folder. Those are photocopies. The originals are in a fireproof safe in my office in Atlanta. My lawyer has digital backups. You can tear up every piece of paper in this room, and it won't change a single digit of the reality. The house belongs to Castillo Beacon, LLC. The house belongs to me. For the first time since I had walked in, my father spoke up. Frank Castillo looked old. The bluster, the pride, the patriarch mask. It had all slipped, revealing a tired, frightened man. Quinn, he said. His voice was hoarse. What are you doing? Are you really going to do this? Are you going to take the family home? That is where we raised you. That is where your memories are. Memories don't pay property taxes, Dad, I said. It is our home, he insisted. It belongs to the family. Define family, I said. Because from where I am standing, family seems to mean a group of people who decided to erase me from their life while living on my payroll. You ask whose house it is? Let me tell you how the real world works. The house belongs to the person who pays the insurance. The house belongs to the person who fixed the foundation when it was sinking. The house belongs to the person who carries the risk. I stood up. I felt lighter than I had in years. It does not belong to the people who tell the prettiest stories about it, I added. My mother began to cry. It was her go-to defense mechanism, a weaponized sorrow she had used to control us for decades. How can you be so cruel? She sobbed. We gave you life. We raised you. We sacrificed everything for you children. And now, because of one mistake, one little wedding mix-up, you want to destroy us? You are ungrateful. Quinn, you have a stone where your heart should be. I watched her cry. I watched the tears track through her expensive foundation. A week ago, those tears would have crushed me. A week ago, I would have apologized. I would have written a check just to make her stop. But today, I felt nothing. I am not ungrateful, I said. I am accurate, and I am done paying for a subscription to a family that canceled me. I picked up my purse. I left the folder on the table. I left the torn pieces of the deed on the floor. Where are you going? Trevor demanded. We aren't done here. I am, I said. I am going back to Atlanta. I have work tomorrow. I walked to the door. My hand was on the knob when I turned back one last time. From this point forward, do not call my personal number, I said. Do not email me. Do not come to my office. You will receive a communication from a woman named Paige Rourke. She is my attorney. Any questions you have about the house, or the loans, or the future, you can direct to her. You can't do this, my mother screamed. We are your parents. I know, I said. And that is the only reason I am not calling the police for fraud regarding the other matter. Yet, I opened the door and walked out into the bright, blinding sunshine of Hilton Head. I did not slam the door. I closed it firmly, with a solid, definitive click. I walked to my car, got in, and locked the doors. I checked my mirrors. I put the car in reverse. I did not cry. I did not scream. I felt a strange, vibrating exhaustion, like a machine that had been running in the red for too long and had finally been switched off to cool down. I had severed the limb to save the body. It was a calculated loss. It was the only way to survive. I drove toward the bridge that would take me off the island, leaving the fantasy behind, and heading back to the only thing that had never lied to me, the system. I was 40 minutes outside of Hilton Head, driving through the darkening marshlands where the cell service was spotty, when my phone buzzed against the center console. It was a single. Cheerful chime, the kind of sound that usually signaled a coupon for coffee or a reminder about a dentist appointment. I glanced down. It was an email notification from a major national bank. Subject: Confirmation of your request to refinance credit line ending in 429. I frowned. I did not have a credit line ending in 429. I did not have any accounts with that specific bank. My finances were consolidated, streamlined, and monitored with the paranoia of a woman who assesses institutional risk for a living. I pulled the car onto the shoulder of the highway, gravel crunching under my tires. I put the hazard lights on. The red blinking rhythm filled the car interior. I opened the email. Dear Ms. Castillo, thank you for contacting us regarding the restructuring of your unsecured personal line of credit. As discussed, the limit has been increased to $50,000. $50,000. My stomach turned over. It wasn't the nausea of sickness. It was the nausea of vertigo. The world was tilting. I opened my laptop, tethering it to my phone's hotspot. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I logged into the credit monitoring service I used for work. I bypassed the summary screen and went straight to the detailed report. There it was. Opened 6 months ago. An unsecured personal line of credit. The current balance was $48,000 and change. The payment history showed minimum payments made on time for 5 months. I clicked on the Account Details tab. Billing address: 142 Osprey Circle, Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. My parents' house. I sat there in the silence of the roadside, staring at the screen. They hadn't just used me for the wedding. They hadn't just tricked me into paying for the venue or the dress. They had been running a parallel financial life using my name for half a year. I navigated to the documents section of the bank's portal, guessing the security questions based on the answers my mother would know. Mother's maiden name? Easy. Name of first pet? Easy. High school mascot? Easy. The PDF of the original application downloaded. I opened it. The font was standard. The information was accurate. My social security number, my date of birth, my previous address, and then, at the bottom, the signature. Quinn Castillo. I stopped breathing. It wasn't a shaky forgery. It wasn't a scribbled approximation. It was my signature. The loop of the Q was perfect. The sharp slant of the double L's was exact. It was the signature I used on official contracts. It was the signature I had spent years refining. Someone had practiced this. Someone had sat down with a pen and a piece of paper and traced my name over and over again until they could replicate the muscle memory of my hand. A cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. This wasn't impulsive. This was architectural. I picked up my phone. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call Trevor. I dialed the fraud department of the bank. "This is the fraud detection unit," a computerized voice said. I waited for a human. When a representative named Sarah came on the line, I spoke with the flat, hard cadence of a recording. "My name is Quinn Castillo. I am currently reviewing my credit report. I have discovered a line of credit opened in my name that I did not authorize. I am initiating a fraud claim. I am recording this call for legal purposes, in accordance with the one-party consent laws of the state of Georgia where I reside." "I understand." "Ms. Castillo," Sarah said, her voice shifting instantly to professional alert. "Do you have the account number?" "I do," I said. "I want the account frozen immediately. I want the IP addresses of all logins for the last 6 months logged and sent to my attorney. I want a copy of the original wet signature application sent to the forensic unit." "We can certainly freeze the account," Sarah said. "But for a full investigation, we will need a police report." "You will have it within the hour," I said. I hung up. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from rage. Pure, distilled rage. Then the phone rang again. It was Aunt Lorraine. I stared at the screen. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to throw the phone into the marsh. But Lorraine had given me the real invitation. Lorraine was the crack in their armor. I answered. "Quinn?" Her voice was a wet gasp. She was crying. "I know. Aunt Lorraine," I said, cutting her off. "I know about the credit line. I just found it." "Oh, God," Lorraine sobbed. "I told her not to. I told her you would find out." "You knew?" I asked. The betrayal felt like a physical blow to the ribs. "You knew they were stealing my identity and you said nothing?" "I didn't know they did it," Lorraine cried. "I just saw the file, last Thanksgiving. I was looking for a recipe in Diane's desk, and I saw a folder with your name on it. It had old checks of yours. It had copies of your passport. It had pages and pages of practice signatures." I asked Diane what it was, and she laughed. She said it was just in case of emergencies. She said since you were so stingy. Sometimes a mother has to do what is best for the family. "Best for the family," I repeated. I thought she was joking. "Quinn, I swear, I didn't think she would actually use it." "Lorraine," I said, "I work in risk management. My entire career is based on my reputation for integrity. If I am flagged for financial fraud, if I have a default on my record, I lose my license. I lose my clearance. I lose my job." Lorraine fell silent. I don't think she had ever considered that. To them, money was just paper. To me, it was my character. They weren't just spending $50,000. They were planting a bomb in the foundation of my life. I am so sorry, Lorraine whispered. I have to go, I said. I hung up. A text message popped up at the top of my screen. It was from Trevor. You are overreacting. Mom is hysterical. Just come back and we can talk about this. The house is family property. Quinn, give it back and I will talk to Dad about working out a payment plan for the other stuff. Don't blow this up. I read the text twice. Give it back. Working out a payment plan. He still thought this was a negotiation. He still thought we were playing by the old rules. Where I got angry, they guilt-tripped me, and I eventually wrote a check to make the awkwardness go away. He didn't realize that the person who played by those rules had died the moment I saw that signature. I typed a reply. My thumbs hit the glass screen with deliberate force. Do not use the word return for something I bought, and do not worry about a payment plan. The law will arrange one for you. I hit send. Then I opened my contacts and found the number for a woman named Paige Rourke. She was the toughest litigator I knew. We had worked together on a corporate embezzlement case 2 years ago. I also searched for a forensic accountant I had used for a commercial audit. I dialed Paige first. Quinn, she answered. It is late. Is everything okay? No, I said. I need to retain you. Personal matter, identity theft, fraud, and asset recovery. Who is the defendant? She asked. My parents and my brother, I said. There was a pause on the line, a long, heavy pause. Are you sure? Paige asked softly. Once we start this machine, Quinn, it does not stop. It is a nuclear option. I looked out the window at the dark water of the marsh. I thought about the practice signatures in my mother's desk. I thought about the $50,000 spent on a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. I thought about the years I had spent trying to buy their love. Only to realize I was just financing their contempt. For the first time in my life, I didn't ask myself if I was being too hard. I didn't ask if I was being cruel. I didn't ask if I could afford to be the bigger person. I am sure, I said. Okay, Paige said. I will have the paperwork ready in the morning. Paige? I asked. Yes? How fast can we move? Fast, she said. Good, I said, because I am already 34 years late. The hotel room I had checked into was beige, impersonal, and quiet, exactly the way I needed my life to be at that moment. I sat on the edge of the bed, my laptop open, the blue light illuminating the dark circles under my eyes. It was nearly 11 o'clock at night. I had just finished drafting an affidavit for Paige regarding the unauthorized credit line when my phone vibrated on the nightstand. It was an unknown number. The area code was local to Hilton Head. My thumb hovered over the decline button. I assumed it was my mother calling from a neighbor's phone. Or perhaps Trevor trying to scream at me from a burner. But something, maybe the same instinct that told me to check the credit report, made me answer. This is Quinn, I said. My voice was stripped of all inflection. Quinn? The voice on the other end was breathless, high-pitched, and trembling. It's Mara. I didn't say anything. I pictured her as I had seen her in the photo album and in the living room earlier that day, radiant, beautiful, and standing next to the man who had stolen my identity. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, Mara stammered, the words tumbling out fast. I know what it looked like today, but I swear to you, Quinn, I didn't know. You didn't know what, Mara? I asked. That I wasn't invited? Or that the wedding happened a week ago? Both, she whispered. I swear on my life, Trevor told me you were traveling for work. He said he sent you an invitation months ago. But you told him you couldn't make it because you had a high-risk audit in Chicago. That is exactly what he said. I felt a cold smirk touch my lips. A high-risk audit? That is creative. He even used the jargon. I asked him, Mara continued, her voice breaking. When I went for my dress fitting, I asked why you weren't there. My sisters were there. His mom was there. I asked, should we call Quinn? And Trevor just sighed. He looked so sad. He said, don't bother, babe. Quinn is different. She doesn't care about this stuff. If you call her, She will just make you feel bad about how much the dress costs. I closed my eyes. It was a perfect lie. It played on my actual personality flaws to paint a monster. And you believed him, I said. I didn't want to, Mara said. But then tonight, after you left, it was chaos here. Your mom was screaming. Your dad was drinking. And Trevor was just pacing. He kept saying you were bluffing. He kept saying, she won't actually do it. But I went upstairs to our room. I wanted to pack a bag. I just wanted to get away from the noise. She paused, and I heard the sound of paper rustling over the line. I opened the top drawer of his nightstand looking for my charger, she said. And I found them. 2 envelopes. One was addressed to you. Sealed, with a stamp. The date on the card inside says April 19th. The other one was ripped open. It was the real one. For April 12th. He kept the evidence, I said. Classic Trevor. He is too lazy to throw away his own lies. He didn't just keep them, Quinn, Mara said, and now she was crying in earnest. He had notes on them, on the fake one. He had written a reminder. Mail this on March 30th, so it arrives too late to ask questions. I sat up straighter. Do you have that envelope right now? Yes. Keep it, I commanded. Do not let him see it. That proves intent. That proves malice. There is more, Mara said. Her voice dropped to a whisper, terrified. I started looking through his other papers. I know I shouldn't have, but I was scared. Quinn, he told me the river house was ours. The river house in Bluffton? Yes. He told me that was his wedding gift from your parents. He said they were downsizing to a condo and giving us the estate. He said we could move in next month. I laughed. It was a harsh, dry sound. Mara, my parents don't own that house. They haven't owned it for 3 years. I own it, through a holding company, and I just served them an eviction notice effective in 30 days. I know, she sobbed. I know that now because you said it. But Quinn, I gave him money. The air left the room. How much? I asked. $20,000, Mara said. It was my savings. He said we needed it for closing costs and transfer taxes to get the deed put in our names. He said since the house was a gift, we had to pay the fees. I wrote him a check 2 weeks ago. I felt a surge of nausea. It wasn't just me. He was cannibalizing everyone. He had taken $20,000 from his own fiancée for closing costs on a house he knew belonged to his sister. Did the check clear? I asked. Yes, last Tuesday. And the account he put it in? The joint account we just opened, she said. But when I checked the app just now, the money is gone. It was transferred out to TC Ventures. That is his shell company, I said. The money is gone, Mara. He likely used it to pay off gambling debts or the catering bill for the party I wasn't invited to. I feel sick, she whispered. I married a stranger. I thought he was this sweet, misunderstood guy who just needed a break. I thought you were the villain. He needed a villain to explain why he was always broke, I said. I was a convenient antagonist. What do I do? She asked. I am at my mom's house now. I couldn't stay there. But do I divorce him? Do I sue him? I paused. I was not a therapist. I was not a divorce attorney. But Mara was currently the only person inside the fortress who had a map. That is up to you, I said. But I will tell you this. The house is not his. It will never be his. I am taking it back. And I am filing criminal charges for identity theft regarding a credit line he opened in my name. If you stay with him, you are staying with a felon. Identity theft? Mara gasped. $50,000, I said, using my social security number. Oh my God, she breathed. Then, silence. A long, calculating silence. Quinn, she said finally. Her voice was different now. The trembling was gone, replaced by a hard, brittle edge. He has a laptop, an old one he keeps in the closet. He thinks I don't know the password, but I do. It is Mara Forever, 2026. Okay, I said, waiting. He has a folder on the desktop called Finances, she said. But inside, there are subfolders. One of them is named Quinn. I saw it once over his shoulder, but he closed it fast. Can you get into that laptop? I have it with me, she said. I took it when I grabbed my bag. I don't know why. I didn't want him to have it. Turn it on, I said. Right now. I waited. I heard the startup chime of a computer. I heard her typing. I'm in, she said. Open the folder named Quinn. Okay, oh. Her breath hitched. There are scans here. Your driver's license, your passport, a utility bill. Look for emails, I said. Look for correspondence with mom or dad. There is a PDF here, she said. It is an email thread. The date is 6 months ago. Read the subject line, I said. The subject is Re, using Quinn's profile for approval. She read. My blood ran cold. Forward it to me, I said. Right now. Do not pass go. Do not think about it. Just forward it. I am sending it, she said. And Quinn? There is another folder here. It is labeled Contractors. Send that too, I said. Sent, she said. Did you get them? My laptop pinged. A new email appeared in my inbox. Sender. Mara. Davis at email.com. I clicked it open. I saw the subject line. Re. Using Quinn's profile for approval. I scanned the text. It was an email from my mother to Trevor. Trevor. Honey, I found her old tax return in the attic boxes. The social is on page 1. Dad says if we use the online application, they won't ask for a live verification call. Just make sure you use the burner phone number so she doesn't get the alert. We can pay the minimums until the house sells, then pay it off before she notices, until the house sells. They were planning to sell my house, the house they didn't own. They were going to forge my signature on a deed transfer, sell the property, pay off the credit card fraud, and pocket the difference. They weren't just parasites. They were predators. I got it, I said to Mara. Thank you. Quinn, she said. Does this mean I get my $20,000 back? I hesitated. I could lie to her. I could tell her yes, but I had promised myself I would stop playing their game of false hope. Honestly, Mara, I said, probably not. The money is likely spent. But if you give me everything on that hard drive, I can include you as a victim in the fraud case. It might help you get a judgment against him in the divorce. Okay, she said. I'll do it. I want to burn him down. Welcome to the team, I said. I hung up the phone. I looked at the email on my screen. Until the house sells. I picked up my phone and dialed Paige. My attorney. It was midnight. I didn't care. Quinn? She answered, sounding groggy. Wake up. Paige, I said. I have the smoking gun, and I need to file an emergency injunction on the property title first thing in the morning. They are trying to sell it. Send it over, Paige said, her voice instantly sharp. I hit forward. I looked at the digital clock on the bedside table. It was 12:01. It was officially April 19th, my brother's wedding day. Happy wedding day, Trevor, I whispered to the empty room. I got you a lawsuit. The morning sun hit the glass facade of the Harborline Risk Group building in downtown Atlanta with a blinding intensity. I sat in my corner office on the 34th floor, surrounded by the familiar comforts of my trade. 3 monitors hummed with actuarial tables. The air conditioner maintained a constant, sterile 68 degrees. Here, in this glass tower, chaos was something to be quantified, managed, and insured against. But down in the lobby, chaos was waiting for a visitor pass. My receptionist buzzed me at 9 o'clock sharp. Ms. Castillo, she said. There is a woman here to see you, a Ms. Lorraine Miller. She says she is your aunt. She does not have an appointment. I stared at the phone. Aunt Lorraine had never come to my office. She was terrified of city driving. Send her up, I said. When the elevator doors opened, Lorraine looked smaller than I remembered. She was wearing her Sunday church coat, clutching a battered brown leather briefcase to her chest like a shield. Her eyes were red-rimmed, darting around the sleek, modern office like a trapped bird. I stood up and walked around my desk. Aunt Lorraine, she didn't hug me. She walked straight to the guest chair and sat down, placing the briefcase on her lap. Her hands were trembling so hard the brass buckles rattled. "I didn't want to come," she whispered, "but after we talked last night I couldn't sleep." "Do you want water?" I asked. "I want you to have this," she said. She pushed the briefcase across the mahogany desk toward me. The leather was cracked and smelled of mildew and old perfume, the scent of my mother's home office. "What is it?" "It is your mother's leverage file," Lorraine said. "She thinks she lost it years ago. She thinks the movers stole it when they downsized. But I took it. I took it 5 years ago when I saw what she was putting in it." I looked at the bag. "Leverage?" "Open it," Lorraine said. "She keeps everything. Quinn, she says information is better than money because you can spend it more than once." I undid the buckles. The leather groaned. Inside, it wasn't just a few papers. It was a dense brick of documentation, emails printed out on draft paper, text message screenshots, bank statements, handwritten notes on legal pads. I reached in and pulled out a stack of papers from the top. They were emails between my mother and father. Dated 6 months ago, I began to read. The subject line was, "Logistics for the big day." Diane, "We need to finalize the catering count. 80 guests for the real ceremony on the 12th. Just family and the important friends." Frank, "What about Quinn? Did you send the invite?" Diane, "I am printing a separate one for her. For the 19th. We'll mail it late. If she comes on the 12th, she will see the new car. She will see the champagne. She will start asking about the house payments and the debt consolidation loan. You know how she gets. She ruins the mood with her math. Better to let her show up when the party is over." I felt a cold sensation in my stomach, like swallowing ice. They hadn't just panicked and lied. They had discussed my exclusion with the same casual pragmatism as choosing a napkin color. I was not a family member to be missed. I was a risk factor to be mitigated. I turned the page. Here was an email from 3 years ago. Subject: The bank loan. Frank, "The loan officer is asking for Quinn's signature on the co-signer agreement. She hasn't replied to the email." Diane, "Don't worry about it. Just trace it from the Christmas card she sent. If the bank calls, tell them she is traveling and gave verbal authorization. She always agrees in the end anyway. She is too busy to check the fine print. Just get it done so the funds clear by Friday. She always agrees in the end anyway." I stared at the words. That was their thesis statement on my life. They banked on my fatigue. They banked on the fact that I would always choose to pay rather than fight. They had weaponized my own compliance against me. I dug deeper into the bag. There were carbon copies of checks I had never written. There were medical bills for surgeries my father supposedly had, which I had paid for. But the dates on the insurance claims didn't match the dates on the invoices. They had doctored the dates to get double reimbursement, once from the insurance and once from me. Then, I found a document near the bottom. It was a quitclaim deed for a piece of land in Georgia that my grandmother had left to all 3 of us, me, Trevor, and the parents. The document showed that I had signed over my share to Trevor 4 years ago. I had never signed such a thing, but there, on the witness line, was a signature I recognized. Lorraine Miller. I looked up. Lorraine was weeping silently, tears tracking through the powder on her cheeks. "You witnessed this," I said. It wasn't a question. "I didn't know what it was," she sobbed. "Diane put it in front of me at Sunday dinner. She said, 'Lorraine, just sign here. It is just some paperwork for the county to clear up the property lines.' I didn't read it. Quinn, I trusted her. She is my sister." "It wasn't property lines," I said, my voice flat. "It was theft. You witnessed a theft." "I know," she said. "I found out a year later when Trevor sold the land and bought that sports car. I asked Diane about it, and she laughed. She said, 'Quinn doesn't need the money. She has plenty. Trevor needs a win.'" Lorraine reached across the desk and grabbed my hand. Her skin was cold and dry. "I am a coward. Quinn, I have been a coward for 60 years. I saw them using you. I saw them mocking you behind your back while spending your money. And I said nothing because I didn't want to be the one they turned on. I didn't want to be the outsider. She squeezed my hand hard. But when I saw that fake invitation, when I saw you standing in my living room with that dress, it broke something in me. I can't do it anymore. I looked at her. I looked at the pile of evidence that proved my entire relationship with my family was a long con. I didn't pull my hand away, but I didn't offer comfort either. I was in work mode now. I don't want your apology, Aunt Lorraine, I said. I want your testimony. She blinked, surprised. What? I am going to sue them, I said. Not just for the house, for everything. Fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, unjust enrichment. And this bag? This bag is the ammunition. I tapped the document with her signature on it. But this piece of paper implicates you. You signed as a witness to a forged deed. If I take this to court, you could be charged as an accomplice. Lorraine took a shaky breath. She sat up straighter. I don't care. You could go to jail, Lorraine, or at least face a heavy fine. I don't care, she repeated. I am tired of the secrets. I am tired of looking at you and feeling sick. If they sue you, if they say you are lying, I will stand up. I will tell the judge exactly what Diane told me. I will tell them about the practice signatures. I will tell them everything. You are willing to go on the record? I asked. To destroy the family reputation? There is no reputation left, Lorraine said. There is only the truth, and I don't want to die with this silence inside me. I nodded. It was the first time in my life I respected her. I picked up my office phone and dialed an extension. Send Miles in, I said, 2 minutes later. Miles Kavanaugh walked in. Miles was a forensic accountant who usually worked on corporate mergers and organized crime cases. He was a man who saw the world in binary code, black and red ink. What do we have? Miles asked, eyeing the briefcase. A decade of evidence, I said. I need you to digitize everything. I want a timeline. I want every signature scanned and analyzed against my verified exemplars. I want the metadata on these emails traced to confirm the sender IP addresses. I want you to reconstruct the flow of funds from every check mentioned in these notes. Miles put on a pair of latex gloves. He picked up the logistics for the big day email. He read it, and a low whistle escaped his lips. Cold, he muttered. They planned the fraud like they were planning a picnic. Yes, I said. They did. For the next 3 hours, my office turned into a war room. Miles set up a scanner. We taped a timeline to the glass wall. 2016, 2018, 2020. With every document, a pattern emerged. It wasn't just desperate people making bad choices. It was a systematic extraction of wealth. They treated me like a renewable resource. At noon, my lawyer, Paige Rourke, arrived. She looked at the timeline. She looked at the witness statement Lorraine was writing out in longhand in the corner. She looked at the email regarding the credit line fraud. Paige turned to me. Her face was grim. Quinn, she said, I came here thinking we were filing a civil suit for a property dispute. And now? I asked. Paige gestured to the wall, to the emails where my mother discussed forging my name, to the notes where my father calculated how much they could squeeze out of me before I noticed. This isn't a family dispute, Paige said. Her voice was cold as steel. This is a criminal enterprise. These people didn't just borrow from you, they groomed you. They farmed you. She picked up the quitclaim deed. This is a pattern of behavior, she said. RICO statutes might be a stretch, but looking at this, we have wire fraud, we have mail fraud, we have forgery, we have conspiracy. She looked me in the eye. We aren't just going to win the house back. Quinn, if we use this briefcase, we are going to put them in prison. I looked at the timeline one last time. I looked at the date of the wedding I wasn't invited to. File it, I said. File everything. The war against my family did not look like a war. There were no shouting matches in the driveway. There were no thrown vases or tearful confrontations in the rain. Instead, it looked like a stack of crisp, white paper sitting on a mahogany conference table in a high-rise office in Atlanta. I sat across from Paige Rourke and Miles Kavanaugh. The air conditioning in the conference room was set to a brisk 68 degrees. Outside, the city was waking up, but inside, we were locking down. "Sign here," Paige said, sliding a retainer agreement across the polished wood. And here, and initial the bottom of page 4, I signed my name, Quinn Castillo. The ink was black, the strokes were firm. With each signature, I was not just hiring a lawyer, I was building a fortress. "Okay," Miles said, tapping his tablet. "Phase 1 is containment. We are executing a full financial freeze. I have contacted the 3 major credit bureaus. We have placed a fraud alert on your file. No new credit can be opened in your name without a verbal password confirmation and a biometric scan." "Good," I said. "Next," Miles continued, his fingers flying across the screen. "We are revoking all previous authorizations. I found a limited power of attorney document you signed 5 years ago for medical emergencies. Your mother has been using it to access your medical records and occasionally to authorize transfers from your health savings account. That is now void. I have faxed the revocation to every hospital and bank in the state." I felt a phantom ache in my chest. They had monetized my health. They had monetized my trust. "What about the digital access?" I asked. "Done," Miles said. "I have reset the passwords for your email, your bank accounts, your investment portfolio, and your retirement fund. I have implemented hardware-based 2-factor authentication. Unless they have this physical security key," he held up a small silver USB drive, "they cannot get in. I don't care if they guess your mother's maiden name. I don't care if they know the name of your first pet. They are locked out." I watched the screen as he worked. It was like watching a drawbridge being raised. "Now," Paige said, opening a thick binder, "let us talk about the offensive strategy. We are filing a civil complaint for the recovery of assets, specifically the unauthorized credit line usage. But before we get to court, we need to manage their reaction, because they will react." "They already are," I said. I pulled out my phone. It was silent, but the notification light was blinking a frantic red. I had 43 missed calls since 8 o'clock this morning. My mother, my father, cousins I hadn't spoken to in a decade. Even my high school chemistry teacher had sent me a Facebook message asking why I was abandoning my parents in their time of need. "They are mobilizing the flying monkeys," Paige noted dryly. "This is standard for narcissistic family systems. When they lose control, they try to regain it through social pressure." "She came to my office yesterday," I said. "My mother, she tried to get past security. She told the guard she had a heart condition and needed to see her daughter before she died." Paige looked up, her eyes sharp. "Did she get in?" "No. The guard followed protocol, but she stood in the lobby for 20 minutes crying and telling anyone who would listen that I was an ungrateful child who stole her house." "Good," Paige said. "She didn't mean it was good for my soul. She meant it was good for the case. We are going to log that. We are creating a file called harassment pattern. Every call, every text, every unsolicited visit. We do not respond. We do not argue. We document. If they scream, we record the decibels." She slid a piece of paper toward me. "From this moment on, Quinn, you are mute. You do not speak to them. If they call, you let it go to voicemail. If they text, you screenshot it and send it to me. If they show up at your door, you do not open it. You call the police." "The police?" I asked. "For my parents?" "For trespassers," Paige corrected. "They lost the title of parents when they committed felony identity theft. Now, they are just defendants." The reality of it settled over me. It was cold, but it was solid. I finally had a wall to put my back against. 2 hours later, the first real test of our defenses arrived. I was at my desk reviewing a risk assessment for a shipping client when my office line rang. It was the head of building security. "Ms. Castillo," he said, his voice tight. "We have a situation in the lobby. A Mr. Trevor Castillo is here. He is agitated." I closed my eyes. "Is he asking for a pass?" "He is screaming, ma'am. He is shouting that you stole his inheritance. He is demanding to see you regarding a property dispute. He tried to bypass the turnstiles." "Do not let him up," I said. "Call the police, and make sure the cameras are recording. They are always recording. Ms. Castillo." I hung up. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a primitive rhythm of fear that I had lived with for 34 years. But then I looked at the binder Paige had left on my desk. Harassment pattern. I picked up the phone and dialed Paige. "He is here," I said. "Trevor, he is making a scene in the lobby." "Perfect," Paige said. "Let him scream. Is security handling it?" "Yes." "I want the incident report," Paige said. "I want the security footage, and I want the statement from the guard. Trevor just made a fatal tactical error. He turned a private family dispute into a public disturbance." 30 minutes later, I received the video file. I watched it on my monitor. Trevor looked deranged. He was wearing the same suit he had worn in the wedding photos. But now it was rumpled. He was pointing a finger at the security guard, his face twisted in ugly red-faced rage. "It is my house," he was screaming. "She tricked my parents. She is a thief. Tell her to come down here. I want my money." I watched my brother, the golden child, unraveling because someone had finally changed the lock. "Look at this," Paige said when she arrived to review the footage. "He is demanding money. He is using physical intimidation in the state of Georgia. That crosses the line from annoying to criminal." She typed a quick note on her tablet. "We are going to use this. This isn't just a tantrum. This is financial coercion. He is attempting to use fear to extract assets. We are filing for a temporary restraining order. Today." "And the house?" I asked. "We are sending the formal notice to quit immediately," Paige said. 30 days. That is the legal requirement. They have 30 days to vacate the premises or sign a lease agreement that acknowledges Castillo Beacon LLC as the sole owner, along with a repayment plan for the back taxes. "They will never sign," I said. "They think they own it." "Then in 30 days, the sheriff will escort them out," Paige said. "It is not a negotiation. Quinn, it is a procedure." That afternoon, the courier was dispatched. I imagined the scene. My father answering the door, expecting a package or an apology. Instead, receiving a thick envelope from Rourke and Associates. Inside, no emotional letter, no, "I'm sorry it came to this." Just a legal notification stating that the occupants of 142 Osprey Circle were unlawful tenants and had 30 days to vacate. But the final blow didn't come from me. It came from the bank. Around 4 o'clock. Miles knocked on my door. He looked grimly satisfied. "I just got off the phone with the fraud department at the National Bank," he said. "The one where the $50,000 credit line was opened. And they finished their preliminary investigation. They traced the IP address used to sign the electronic loan agreement. It resolves to a residential modem in Hilton Head." "My parents' house," I said. "Correct," Miles said. "But it gets better. They cross-referenced the device ID. The loan was signed on a laptop that has also been used to log into your father's personal checking account at the same bank." "They caught them," I whispered. "They didn't just catch them," Miles said. "They flagged them. The bank is preparing to file a suspicious activity report with the federal authorities. This is no longer just a civil matter between you and your family. The bank is a victim of fraud, and banks do not have feelings. Banks do not have guilt. Banks prosecute." I swiveled my chair to look out the window. The Atlanta skyline was sharp and clear. For years. I had been afraid of what would happen if I stopped paying. I thought the sky would fall. I thought my world would collapse if I wasn't the load-bearing pillar holding up their dysfunction. But the sky was still there. The building was still standing. "Paige is filing the motion for the restraining order now," Miles said, "based on the lobby incident and the fraudulent credit activity. The judge will likely grant it ex parte. That means it goes into effect immediately. They cannot come within 500 yards of you, your home, or your workplace. If they do, they go to jail." "Okay," I said. "You are safe, Quinn," Miles said gently. "The system is working." That night, I went home to my apartment. I didn't check my email. I didn't check my voicemail. I knew that somewhere in Hilton Head, a phone was ringing in an empty house, or perhaps my parents were screaming at a piece of paper that told them their time was up. I took a shower. I put on my pajamas. I turned off the lights. For the first time in 10 years, I put my phone in the kitchen drawer and closed it. I walked into my bedroom and lay down. The silence was absolute. There was no buzzing. There was no dread. There was no anticipation of the next crisis I would have to pay to solve. I closed my eyes. The legal machinery was humming along, grinding down their lies with the slow, inevitable pressure of justice. I didn't need to do anything. I didn't need to be the good daughter. I didn't need to be the useful sister. I just needed to be the plaintiff, and for the first time in my life. I slept through the night. The fallout began as a whisper. Then it turned into a gale. In a town like Hilton Head, reputation is currency, and my parents had spent years inflating theirs while devaluing mine. Initially, the story circulating at the country club was that I was a bitter, estranged daughter who had boycotted her own brother's wedding out of jealousy. My mother played the role of the martyr perfectly, sighing over iced tea about how hard they had tried to include me, but I was simply too career-obsessed to care about family milestones. That narrative lasted exactly 48 hours. It collapsed the moment I sent a single email to my Aunt Lorraine, who then accidentally forwarded it to the entire extended family listserv. The email contained no angry rant, no accusations, and no emotional pleas. It contained only 2 attachments. The first was a high-resolution scan of the invitation I had received, dated April 19th. The second was a scan of the invitation everyone else had received, dated April 12th. The silence that followed was deafening. Cousin Sarah, who had posted a long Facebook status about cherishing family while you can, in a veiled swipe at me, deleted it. My Uncle Bob, who had left me a voicemail calling me selfish, sent a text apologizing and asking if I wanted to grab lunch next time he was in Atlanta. The shift was instant. The evidence was binary. There was no interpretation of 2 different dates printed on the same cardstock. It was proof of a conspiracy, and it made my parents look not just cruel, but calculating. For Trevor, the consequences were immediate and domestic. Mara did not wait for the legal proceedings to begin. She packed her bags and drove straight to her mother's house in Jacksonville, Florida. She sent Trevor a text that I later saw in the legal discovery files. It said simply, "I do not know who you are. Do not contact me until you can show me a bank statement that belongs to you." Without Mara, Trevor was exposed. He lost his audience, his human shield, and his second income stream all in one afternoon. Desperate to stop the bleeding, my father, Frank, tried to play his last card. He reached out to Reverend Thomas, a retired pastor and a pillar of the community who had known our family for 30 years. He asked the Reverend to mediate a misunderstanding between a father and his wayward daughter. It was a classic Frank move. Bring in a moral authority to shame me into submission so he could save face without ever admitting fault. I agreed to the meeting, but I did not go to the church, and I did not go alone. We met in a neutral conference room at a mediation center in downtown Savannah. The room was sterile, smelling of lemon polish and stale coffee. My parents sat on one side of the table, looking diminished. My mother wore a pale blue cardigan and clutched a tissue. My father wore his Sunday suit, but it looked loose on him, as if his confidence had been the only thing filling it out. Trevor sat between them, sullen and staring at his phone. Reverend Thomas sat at the head of the table, smiling benevolently. "Now," the Reverend began, his voice like warm syrup. "We are here to heal. Frank tells me there has been some confusion about dates and deeds. But surely, Quinn, as a Christian woman, you understand that family is a bond that cannot be broken by paperwork. The Bible tells us to honor our father and mother." I looked at the Reverend. Then I looked at Paige, my attorney, who was sitting next to me with a laptop open and a court reporter recording every word. With all due respect, Reverend, I said, my voice calm. The Bible also says, "Thou shalt not steal," and it says nothing about honoring identity theft. My mother let out a sharp sob. We didn't steal. We borrowed. We were going to pay it back as soon as the house market turned. Diane, Frank hissed, putting a hand on her arm. No, let her speak, Paige said, looking up from her screen. Mrs. Castillo, you said you were going to pay it back. Are you referring to the mortgage payments on the house Quinn owns, or the credit line you opened in her name? It is all the same pot, Diane cried, her face flushing pink. We are a family. What is mine is hers. We just needed the $50,000 to bridge the gap until Trevor's business took off. We didn't spend it on luxury. We spent it on survival. The room went quiet. Even Trevor looked up, his eyes widening. I leaned forward. 50,000? I asked softly. I never told you the limit on the fraudulent credit line was $50,000. The bank only told me. How did you know the exact amount? Mom? Diane froze. Her mouth opened, then closed. She realized she had just stepped onto a landmine. I guessed, she stammered. I assumed. You didn't assume, I said. You knew because you filled out the application. You knew because you forged my signature. I did not, she insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. I would never sign your name. Paige turned her laptop around so the screen faced my parents. On it was a digital display from the forensic handwriting analysis. This, Paige said, pointing to the screen, is the signature on the credit application submitted 6 months ago, and this, she clicked to the next image, is a permission slip for a high school field trip signed by Quinn Castillo 16 years ago. And this, she clicked a third time, is a tax return form found in your email outbox. Diane, sent to yourself 3 years ago. The overlay showed the signatures matching perfectly, not naturally perfect, but mechanically perfect. The tremors, the pressure points, the exact angle of the Q. Our forensic expert confirmed it, Paige said. You didn't just forge it, you traced it. You kept an old document with Quinn's signature, scanned it, and used image editing software to paste it onto the bank application. That is not an impulse, Mrs. Castillo. That is wire fraud. That is premeditated federal crime. My father put his head in his hands. The Reverend looked from the screen to my parents, his benevolent smile vanishing. He began to gather his Bible and his spectacles. Frank, the Reverend said, his voice cold, you told me this was a misunderstanding about a wedding date. You did not tell me there were criminal accusations. It is a misunderstanding, Frank pleaded. She is twisting it. She is my daughter. She owes us. I owe you nothing, I said. I have paid my dues. I have paid for the roof over your head. I have paid for your reputation. I have paid for your mistakes. And the only thing I got in return was a fake invitation to a party you didn't want me at. I reached into my bag and pulled out a document. It was not a lawsuit. It was a settlement agreement. I slid it across the table. Here's the choice, I said. Option A. You sign this. It states that you acknowledge the debt. It creates a strict repayment plan for the $50,000, deducted automatically from your pension and Social Security. It also states that you will vacate the property in Bluffton within 30 days. Leaving it in good condition, if you do this, I will ask the bank to pause the criminal referral, and I will not pursue charges for the identity theft. I paused. Option B. You do not sign. We leave this room, and Paige files the civil suit. I hand over the forensic report to the FBI. The bank proceeds with the fraud investigation. You will lose the house anyway, but you will likely spend the next 5 to 10 years in a federal facility for wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. Trevor looked at the document. You would put your own parents in jail? No, Trevor, I said. They put themselves in jail when they stole my identity. I am the one offering them the key to get out." My mother looked at me. Her eyes were searching for the soft, pliable daughter she had known for decades. She was looking for the girl who just wanted to be liked. She was looking for the Quinn who would crumble if you called her cold, but that Quinn was gone. She had been left behind in a living room in Savannah, staring at a wedding album she wasn't in. "Quinn, please," my mother whispered. "Family is everything." "If family is everything," I said, "then you should have treated me like family. Instead of an ATM, I checked my watch. "You have 5 minutes to decide," I said. "The notary is waiting in the lobby." Frank looked at the Reverend, but the Reverend was already walking out the door. He looked at Trevor, but Trevor was slumped in his chair, defeated. He looked at Diane, and for the first time, I saw him realize that her tears were not going to fix this. He picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. 30 days? He asked, his voice a ghost of its former boom. 30 days, I said. Not an hour more, he signed. Then he pushed the paper to my mother. She wept as she signed, spilling a tear onto the page right next to her name. It was a dramatic touch, but legally irrelevant. Paige took the document, checked the signatures, and nodded to me. "We are done here," Paige said. I stood up. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't say I loved them. I didn't say I was sorry. Those words belonged to a relationship that existed only in their heads. I walked out of the conference room and into the bright, humid air of the street. I took a deep breath. It smelled of rain and exhaust and freedom. I had lost my family, but for the first time in 34 years, I had found myself. The drive to the Beaufort Yacht and Sailing Club took 40 minutes. The sun was setting over the marshes, casting long purple shadows across the water, but I did not notice the view. I was too busy reviewing the final checklist with Paige in the passenger seat. My parents and Trevor were holding a post-wedding appreciation dinner. It was a desperate, transparent attempt to rewrite the narrative. They had invited the local elite, the neighbors, and the extended family. Anyone whose opinion mattered in their small, insulated world. They were banking on the fact that I would stay in Atlanta, licking my wounds, too ashamed or too busy to make a scene. They were wrong. I was not coming to make a scene. I was coming to end the show. We pulled into the gravel driveway. The parking lot was full of luxury sedans and SUVs. I parked my car right at the front, next to a Lexus that I knew for a fact was 2 payments behind. "Are you ready?" Paige asked. She was holding a thick black leather portfolio. "I have been ready for 34 years, I said. We walked into the clubhouse. The room was bathed in warm, golden light. A jazz band was playing softly in the corner. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne. My mother was standing near the fireplace, holding court in a silver dress, laughing at something the mayor's wife had said. Trevor was at the bar, looking flushed and confident. When I stepped through the double doors, the air pressure in the room seemed to drop. It started with the people nearest the entrance. They stopped talking. Then the silence spread like a ripple across a pond, moving inward until it reached the fireplace. The jazz band faltered and then stopped. My mother turned. Her smile froze. It didn't fade. It just solidified into a mask of terror. "Quinn," she said, her voice shrill in the sudden quiet. "We didn't expect you." "I know," I said. My voice was calm, carrying easily to the back of the room. "You expected me to be invisible, just like you expected me to be on April 12th. Trevor pushed off the bar and stormed over. "What are you doing here, Quinn? This is a private party. You are ruining everything, as usual." "Actually," Paige said, stepping forward. She didn't raise her voice, but her tone cut through Trevor's bluster like a scalpel. "Miss Castillo is here to deliver a legal notification in person, as your previous attempts to evade service have been noted by the court." Paige opened the portfolio. She pulled out a document stamped with the seal of the Beaufort County Sheriff. "This is a notice to quit," Paige announced, handing it to my father. who had just materialized at my mother's side. You have been occupying the property at 142 Osprey Circle without a valid lease. The owner, Castillo Beacon, LLC, is terminating your tenancy effective immediately. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. A gasp went through the room. That is a lie, my mother shouted, looking around at her guests. She is lying. We own that house. We bought it 20 years ago. You sold it 3 years ago to avoid foreclosure, I said, and you have been living there on my charity ever since. Charity? Trevor sneered. You are just jealous. You are jealous that we are happy and you are alone with your money. You are trying to buy control because no one actually likes you. I looked at him. I am not trying to buy control. Trevor, I am trying to stop you from stealing my identity. I signaled to Paige. She pulled out the second document. It was the confirmation letter from the bank's fraud department. This is a formal notice that a federal investigation has been opened regarding a fraudulent credit line of $50,000 taken out in the name of Quinn Castillo, I said. The IP addresses have been traced to your home. The signatures have been analyzed. The bank is no longer asking for repayment. They are building a case for wire fraud. My father went pale. He looked at the paper in Paige's hand as if it were radioactive. Quinn, he whispered. You wouldn't. I didn't, I said. You did. You committed the crime. The bank is just following the law. She is making it up, my mother screamed, her composure cracking completely. She has always been a liar. She is trying to frame us. Who would believe a bitter, ungrateful daughter over her own mother? I would, a voice said from the back of the room. The crowd parted. Aunt Lorraine walked forward. She was shaking, clutching her purse with both hands, but her head was high. Lorraine, my mother asked, what are you doing? I am done, Diane, Lorraine said. She stopped next to me. I am done watching you bleed her dry. Lorraine reached into her purse and pulled out a yellowed piece of paper. This is the original affidavit you made me sign, Lorraine said to the room. The one where you forged the deed transfer, and I have the emails. I have the texts where you laughed about sending the invitation for the wrong date. I gave them all to Quinn's lawyer this morning. My mother looked at her sister. For the first time, I saw the realization hit her. She had no leverage left. The secrets she had hoarded were now weapons in someone else's hands. You traitor, my mother hissed. No, Lorraine said softly. I am just a witness. Trevor looked around the room. He saw the judgment in the eyes of the guests. He saw the mayor's wife backing away. He needed a villain. He needed to turn the crowd back against me. This is insane, Trevor yelled. She brainwashed Lorraine. Quinn is obsessed with ruining my wedding because she can't stand that I found love. She wasn't invited because she is toxic. She is a cold, heartless... Stop it, Trevor. The voice came from the patio doors. Mara stepped into the light. She wasn't wearing a party dress. She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and her eyes were red from crying. Trevor blanched. Mara, baby, what are you doing here? I thought you were at your mom's. I was, Mara said. She walked to the center of the room. She didn't look at Trevor. She looked at the crowd. He told me Quinn wasn't invited because she didn't care, Mara said clearly. He told me she was too busy working. But last night, I found the real invitation in his nightstand. He hid it. He and his parents planned it. They wanted her money, but they didn't want her face. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a truth that could not be spun, twisted, or denied. Trevor opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I stepped forward. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I felt a strange, cool peace settle over me. I did not come here to humiliate you, I said to my parents. And I certainly did not come here to beg for a seat at this table. I have spent my entire life paying for the privilege of being treated like an outsider in my own family. I thought if I wrote enough checks, if I fixed enough problems, eventually you would see me. I looked at my father. He couldn't meet my eyes. But you never saw me, I continued. You only saw the balance sheet. Well, the account is closed. I turned to the guests. I am sorry to interrupt your evening, but I needed to clear my name from the false documents and the lies that have been told in this room. I am not the jealous sister. I am the plaintiff. I turned back to my parents. I placed a single white envelope on the table next to the untouched wedding cake. Inside is an agreement, I said. It outlines a repayment schedule for the $50,000. It outlines the move-out date for the house, and it outlines a permanent no-contact order. If you sign it, and if you stick to it, I will ask the bank to seek restitution instead of prosecution. I will not send you to prison. My father looked up. His eyes were wet. Quinn, he croaked, we let things go too far. I looked at him. It was the closest he would ever come to an apology. And yet, I felt nothing. It was too late. The statute of limitations on my heart had run out. Yes, Dad, I said. You did. I didn't wait for an answer. I nodded to Paige. We turned and walked out of the clubhouse. We left the stunned silence behind us. We walked out into the cool night air. I got into my car. Paige got in beside me. You did good, she said. I drove away from the club. I didn't drive back to Atlanta. I drove toward Bluffton. 30 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway of the River House. It was dark. My parents were still at the party, staring at the wreckage of their reputation. I walked up the steps. I took the key from my pocket. The key I had legally owned for 3 years but never used. I unlocked the door. The air inside was stale, smelling of my mother's perfume and my father's cigars. But it didn't matter. I walked to the kitchen table. I placed the key in the center of the wood. I looked out the window at the river. The moon was rising, painting the water in silver and black. I took a deep breath. I exhaled, and with that breath, I let go of the anger, the hurt, and the desperate need to belong to people who did not deserve me. I was alone, but I was free. For the first time in 34 years, tomorrow belonged to me. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please comment below and let us know where you are listening from. I would love to connect and share thoughts with you all. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel. Like the video, and support us by hitting the hype button so this story can reach even more people.